In this video, I'm going to try to do a quick version of my life in the working world. I never thought it was really interesting until probably the last 7 years, as people ask me, what did you do? And then somebody will mention this job or this career or something. And, oh yeah, I did that. I've done a lot. And it's most certainly not a normal path. So what made me me? I guess that's what we're getting down to here. So we'll start with, I was born in Elmhurst, Illinois. My birth dad was pretty much a mobster in Chicago. Him and my uncle owned the largest demolition company in Chicago at that time, and I don't think you can own a demolition company without being a made man. And what I remember of him, he did pass away when I was 6 years old. He was not a nice man. He used to punch us, and I've got a picture of him. Maybe I'll post it here if I can find it. You know, he wore the shark suits, and everybody called him the Marlboro Man. I guess he was dark-haired, blue-eyed, hot-tempered, and was part of the Playboy Club when I was in Chicago. And my uncle has confirmed he was. My mom denied it. You know, she was like the typical mafia wife. And then he passed away of brain cancer, supposedly. And I say that because all I remember is his head bandaged. And he was not a good man to my mom or any of us kids. So he passed away. My mom remarried. My stepfather, who was my father, you know, he raised me, a much better man. When my mom married him, he was working for Argonne National Laboratory in Hinsdale, Illinois, outside of Hinsdale, Illinois. And he was a high-ranking government official. Before that, he was a frogman in the Korean War. And then he became a GS-15, which is top secret rank. And he's seen all those things that, you know, above ground nuclear testing, chemical warfare testing. And he always looked like a corpse. He was always really skinny and just kind of hollow looking because he was exposed to some of the chemicals when they were doing chemical war testing. And he lost, I think, 3/4 of his stomach because of that. And he was also had 1 foot, I think it was about 1 inch or 2 higher than the other. He fell off a plane wing when he was gassing it up. And he was just a very quiet man. But I remember as a kid, still living in Illinois at that time, you know, he would wake us all up. And my mom had 4 kids, and he had 4 kids. So there was 8 of us, 8 kids. Like the television show back then, 8 is enough. It was a lot like that. Anyways, and he'd wake us all up, and we'd come down the stairs, and the staircase just like the Brady Bunch. You know, this is back in the 70s. And bring us all down and give us a lecture on, you know, hey, take care of your mom. I'm going to be gone for a while. I don't know when I'm coming back. And, you know, help mom around the house. And then he would walk out into the driveway with a black limo backed up, and the guys in the trench coats and everything. And I didn't think of anything of it. I went to work with him a couple of times, and I remember as a kid when he was at Argonne National Laboratory, I'll never forget the albino deer that's on the property, but his office was in bomb bunkers. And they had little robots. There was like the black and white strip tape along the side of the walls, and they had these little rolling robots and stuff that went down there. And then he had something to do with Fermilab also, which is like CERN. It's been around for years, same location. And he's seen some things, you know, and he had PTSD pretty bad. We never saw it. I would have never guessed, but he retired early, like 5 years early, and he could have retired really well. But he moved all of us kids to Oregon, Bend, Oregon. And we kind of tried to live like Swiss Family Robinson. You know, we raised all our own food, you know, a huge garden. We had pigs and goats and cattle and turkeys, chickens, you know, and so now the big city slicker dad and those kids were trying to run a farm. And so all through school, even high school, I didn't have much of a social life because we had a lot of chores, you know. In the summertime, springtime, I'd have to move irrigation pipe twice a day, really early in the morning. And then when I got home from school, it wasn't just moving it over. I'd have to move it from the upper field and then back down in the yard. The yard was really big, probably 3 acres. And we're talking 4-inch aluminum piping on my shoulder. And then feeding the animals, mending fences, digging ditches. I didn't have much of a social life, but I was in really good shape. So in 1981, I believe it is, I was in high school, and our house burnt to the ground. I remember I was in a school bus. We lived about 10 miles out in the country, and I see this black smoke off in the distance, and the bus would come down this road about a mile away, and then if you took a left, it would come to our house, but they would stop at this intersection and continue down into Tumalo, Oregon. And where the smoke was pretty much where our house was, so I had to ride the bus all the way down to Tumalo and drop people off and then come up, and they pulled right up on our driveway, and there it is, man. It's already burnt to the ground. You know, the firemen there and everything. And I don't know how old I was, 16? Yeah, something like that. 15. I was actually excited, and that's weird. And I think a lot of kids feel that same way, I think. They don't talk about it, but I was like, wow, where are we going from here? I don't have to do any more work. So for the next year, while they were building the new home, we rented a couple of different homes. And actually, it was 2 years to build the home. And I was never popular in high school. I was never bullied or anything. I was just left alone. And there's reasons for that, I went through special ed until I was a sophomore in high school. I had a learning disability, is what they called it at that time, and I really sucked at English, as you're probably seeing all my typos, and there's a reason for that. Back in Illinois, they were teaching the old way of English, pronouncing words, the other way around. Slow down thinking, slow down. In Illinois, they were trying a new way of teaching English, and it was memorization versus the pronouncing and stuff like that. And so by the time I moved to Oregon, they were doing it the old-fashioned way, and it really messed me up. I was behind because of that. So high school, I never did really good. I didn't like school at all. It felt like prison to me. I was the guy that would sit in back where the windows were and stare out there, and would rather be out there than in this gray brick building with prison-like windows. And I remember I was in my special ed class, and before puberty hit, I was like, wow, I'm doing 4 + 4 every semester. Okay, I'll do this, And then puberty kicked in, and literally overnight, I'll never forget it, like the next day, women were like weird, just goddesses. They were like glowing. The shape of their bodies was just like, I didn't even know what I wanted to do with it, And so I became embarrassed and ashamed of being in this class. And I walked into my counselor's office. Larry Arbor, great guy. This was Mountain View High School in Bend, Oregon. And I told him I can't be in that class anymore. And he's like, well, you're so behind, you would fail. I'm like, I don't care. I can't sit in there anymore because I'm not that mentally challenged. Some of the kids I'm sitting next to are slobbering, and they're truly mental retarded. So did horrible in English. I did barely pass it. I got a lot of D's. I couldn't pass U.S. history, and it was required. And Larry Arbor, asked me after like the third attempt. He's like, Rob, you have to graduate. You have to pass U.S. history. What's your problem? And I said, well, I don't believe it. He's like, what? What do you mean you don't believe it? I said, I don't know. It just seems too like perfect or something. Like, I just don't believe it. It's boring. And I don't see how it'll benefit me in my life. If I need to know something about history, I can always go to the library before computers and look it up. And he actually agreed with that. So he said, okay, I'm going to put you in oceanography. And if you pass that class, I'll count that as one of your required, replacing U.S. history. Well, I got A's in oceanography. I got B's and A's in art, geography, architect, all that stuff I did great. But math I sucked at, English I sucked at, I still do. I tell people I pretty much taught myself how to read. And to this day, if I'm on a stage and I'm having to read something, it's an old phobia. In fact, I was the... what's the word? I married a couple, and I had to read, and I was so nervous about it, but I practiced and actually pulled it off just fine. So, overcoming that old fear, and I was 2.5 electives away from graduating from high school. In fact, for many, many years, until probably 6-7 years ago, I would have reoccurring dreams that I had to get up and go to school. It's interesting how that works. Along with the, going to school and you forgot to put your clothes on. I've had those dreams, and I gotta quit saying, So I read a book when I was a senior. It was called Creative Visualization, and I've never read a book like that before. In fact, most books I never finished. I never studied. My parents didn't want to see report cards. They were super loose about that with all of us, not just me, because I was special. And I read that book, Creative Visualization, and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. That's what I believed in. And so that book moved me into a lot of different self-improvement books. My senior year, at this time I never, in high school, I never went to prom. I never went to parties. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I wasn't popular until my senior year, like the last half of the season. Because of our big, beautiful new home that everybody called a mansion. It was beautiful. And I rode a motorcycle to school. What was it called? Magna V45, fast bike. It was my brother's bike, but he was cool. He'd let me take it to school. And actually, it wasn't until the next year when I was out of school, working my first job, selling suits at a clothing store called Robert's Clothes for Men, and then the girls that I went to school with, all the hot ones, hung out with each other. And they would come to my store and tell me how they used to have a crush on me in high school. I'm like, well, what's this used to? I'm here, and never dated, no prom, didn't go to football games. I did play soccer one season, and I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be rich. That was it.
And I did look into being a landscape architect. When I asked my architect teacher, what do they make a year? He said $40,000 a year. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that then. And he failed to tell me that the sky's the limit. You know, a teacher doesn't tell you these things, so I never pursued it. So I knew sales is the highest paid profession in the world and one of the oldest. It's not the oldest, though. We know what that is. Prostitution. That requires sales as well. So I started off selling suits. And that's where I met Sheila, if you know who Osho is online. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, the cult that was in Antelope, Oregon. Big thing back in the 80s. She was one of my customers. She would come into Robert's Clothes for Men, and her and her bodyguards literally had MAC 10s packed in their sport jackets. I would come and buy all of our red and burgundy clothes because the whole village, the whole cult, that's what they wore. I actually went down there once. Fascinating. It was, back when it was before it got shut down because a lot of bad stuff happened there. A lot of bad stuff. People poisoned the water. There was a couple of attempted murders, all because of this Sheila lady. Not actually OSHA or Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. But it was really weird, and I didn't like it. I was more into making money, and the friends I made were business owners, retail store owners, jewelry store. One of my greatest mentors, Marty's Jewelry Store. Marty, phenomenal businesswoman. She was one of my mentors when I was younger. Super successful in the jewelry industry, the diamond industry. And so here I am out in the world. And I really enjoyed selling suits. I've always liked clothing, My clothing were always color coordinated, in my closet. My bedroom was always impeccable as a teenager. And so try to speed this up. There's so much to this. So many things I've done, so many places I've lived. Try to get to the good stuff. I worked in restaurants, dishwasher, busboy, prep cook, waiter, cook. Did that for a bit. I was homeless. I think I talked about that for almost a year in Phoenix, Arizona. There's another video on that. My first girlfriend was Tia. She was amazingly beautiful. One of the popular chicks in school, and I'm out of school now. We dated for 3.5 years, and coming from a really good mom and dad, they had a wonderful marriage, and they were great with their kids. Brady Bunch type stuff for the most part. It wasn't perfect. No family is. And I watched how my mom and dad for years, when they would get upset with each other, they always had this maturity. Mom would say, "Larry, I need to talk to you." And Dad would roll his eyes like, "Oh, God, here I go." They'd go in the room and talk for 5 or 10 minutes. No yelling, no screaming, and walk out, and it's like nothing ever happened. And so I wasn't raised, fortunately, in a family with the screaming and yelling and throwing things and punching walls and stuff like that. My dad did have a drinking problem. It didn't take very much. He would drink one glass of wine and he's wasted because of his stomach. Missing 3/4 of his stomach. But he was a cool, mellow guy. He was in a lot of pain his whole life because of his career as a frogman, Navy SEAL, if you don't know what that is, in the military, and then all the exposure to chemical warfare testing and nuclear above-ground nuclear testing in Nevada. He was there, So I remember the first time Tia got mad at me and was cussing me out like people do, effing fucking did you hear said, ah, threw a handful of keys at me, almost hit me in the face. And I was like, wow, what the heck? I've never seen this before. I've seen it on TV, but I've never thought I would witness that. And it was a big deal to me. And then it made her feel really small because she wasn't raised in a good family. Anyways, I ended up walking in on her sleeping with a friend of mine, and she's all I had at this time. We were, previous to that, we were homeless for about 8 months together. And when I say homeless, we lived out of a car, and it wasn't a van. It wasn't an old Cadillac. It was a Fiat Strada. I'm 6'2", and she modeled professionally, and in the heat of the night in Arizona, in a Fiat without air conditioning. That was an interesting time. There's another video on that, but and when I was with her, I got into the popular crowd in Bend, so I started hanging out with all the younger people that smoke and drank and partied and slept with each other. And I walked in on her sleeping out on me. I was sleeping with a friend of mine, and I'm not going to get into that. I want to get into better things, but it was devastating, at that age especially, and all we had was each other. My family disowned me at that time. And it wasn't anything we were doing. We weren't into drugs, and we weren't alcoholics, and we dressed nice, both her and I always. You would have never known we were homeless. My parents are going through a hard time, and her mom, she didn't know her father at the time, was a psychopath. She was a crazy woman, scary woman. So after I broke up with her, I found out she slept with 4 other friends of mine. And after that, I became a player. I remember when I left her, it was months after I walked in on her, and I was laying on the floor watching The Godfather. I kept having these blackouts, anxiety attacks. That's what it would be called. I didn't know what it was, but I've never had that before. And everything in my body was saying, leave, go. You're done here. The end. And all I had at that time was a motorcycle. Wow. And I packed up my motorcycle and left, and never told her I left. Never. And I met up with a friend of mine back in Bend, Oregon. I was living in Grants Pass, Oregon at that time. And we planned on partying all summer. He bought this new Audi, and we had very little money between each other, but our plan was to go to parties, and we knew a lot of people in Bend, and stay the night at parties, and that's when I started playing with women, and I found out, because it really hurt, as it should, if you're human. What made me a player was me and my friend were hot tubbing with these 2 girls, and we messed around and had sex, and I was like, oh my God, this strange woman can make me feel just as good as Tia did, And so then I found out I wasn't a bad-looking guy, and I was in the party scene, which I never thought I would do, ever. Before the girlfriend. I had the job at the clothing store. I rode 10 speeds like crazy. I was in the martial arts. I was very athletic. I gave people shit for smoking and drinking, and then the dark world bit me. And there's no regrets, but so I slept with a lot of women at that time. Then I would find another girlfriend. I've had 8 girlfriends in my lifetime, and we all lived we lived together, all of them that I dated. And they all had pretty bad tempers except for one. There's one that if I was the marrying type, I would have married, and that's Jeanette. She was just beautiful and gracious and patient, and she talked a lot, though. That annoyed me, but so did my mom, so I was used to that. But she's just a wonderful person to this day. Okay, back to careers. Oh, God, it'll blow your mind now that I know. I guess I can just, I got tricked into working for the carnivals that traveled Canada. And I was very yuppie, although I was a partier. I was into money and nice clothes and beautiful people. And my brother Rick actually talked me into it. He's like, look at this job. They pay $3,000 a month, travel Canada, all expense paid. So I went to the interview. I'm back in Arizona at this time. I'm missing a lot between this all. It's crazy. And I just remember the crazy things I've done as far as careers, the great times and crazy times. Carnival was a crazy time, big time. Camera's really far away, and I'm going to zoom this in so I don't know if I'm looking at you right. We went to the interview in Paradise Valley, beautiful home. Had these fifth wheels, really nice new looking RVs, big ones. And we were told that they go to big events in Canada, and we run the food concession stands. And you get paid $3,000-4,000 a month, and you stay in these RVs, and all expense paid. We do it all summer, and then we're done. And I'm like, cool, I could do that. So several days later, we had dropped off at their house. We packed up in their convoy, and we started heading to Canada. And the first night, we stopped and slept at a rest stop in New Mexico. There were some other guys there that were pretty shady looking, that were riding with us, pretty rough looking people. And so I grabbed my sleeping bag out of the pickup, and I'm walking towards one of the fifth wheels, and they said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to bed. I'm like, no, you're sleeping in the meat truck. So they had this, emptied meat truck with all the metal shelves. And my brother and I slept in there the first night at a rest stop. And they've owned this company for 100 plus years. It's a generational thing. Very wealthy family in the carnival business. I mean, they did it back in the days where they packed up trains, so. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here, And my brother Rick's like, just ride it out. And, we have no cell phone. There was no phone at the rest stop. They've done this many times before. And so the next night, we stopped in Wichita, and they picked up a couple other really shady dudes. And they made us share a Motel 6 room, 2 beds. And there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of us. My brother and I slept on the floor. And of course, there was that prison mentality going on. So a fight broke out, and I'm like, oh my God, man, I do not belong here, And one of them, a couple of them were trying to throw one of the guys out the window. I guess he was making moves on him and under the covers. I'm like, oh, geez, this is crazy. So then we get up to Brandon, Manitoba, and that's our first carnival. I come to find out it's a carnival. I didn't know this. They have 26 stands, and they're all wood, and you have to pin them, pins, and put all this stuff together. And then they brought the trailer that we're going to sleep in, which is a super tight bunk bed. Disgusting. The shower is only a 5-gallon hot water tank. Greasy. And I'm at my stand the first night. I'm running the souvlaki stand, which is a Greek meat. You would throw it on the grill, and it's flame, with what you soaked it in would flame up. And I'm way out in a dark area. And this Indian comes walking up real slow and drunk. And I've got this sneeze guard, in front of my grill, and he throws his hand up, and it's just dripping blood off his hand on my grill. And I'm like, hey, sir, you need to back up. And he started getting mad and started climbing over towards me. So I took my spoon, and I was throwing it on the flame, and flames are going, and they give us all a radio, and they said if there's any problem, just say what your stand is. I'm on the radio going, stand 23, got a guy trying to crawl over the counter here, and all these carny guys came running and beat the shit out of him like you wouldn't believe. Yeah, this is my first experience of the rough life, other than being homeless. We'd never park in the city, though. I was too ashamed. We'd park out in the desert when I was homeless. So I'm kind of zipping through this, but there's a whole book on this. Very tough. I got smart. I got tired of, we would sit in these stands for 12 hours, 15 hours a day. And then one night we hung out in one of the back of the semi-trucks, a trailer, and we played poker and drank beer, which at that time I didn't know Canadian beer was twice as strong. And actually we were sitting outside the first time we did this in a sun setting, and we're playing and we're drinking and trying to break bread with these people. And the sun setting, and we're playing for I don't know how long, and I'm noticing the sun is over here now, It's like, and I'm not thinking about this, now I'm got a little bit of a buzz going on. And then all of a sudden the sun starts rising, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? I've been drinking all night, and we have to be in work in like an hour. Oh, God. And it gets hot and humid in Brandon, Manitoba. So I had to work that stand, and it was just a nightmare, absolute nightmare. Fights broke out all the time. There was a stabbing. I started getting really tough because you're exhausted. But I got smart. The Canadian women they love, back then, I don't know if it's the same now, this is back in the, 80s, late 80s, love American men. And so they would hire the girls to run their other stands locally in Canada, just put an ad in the paper, and these beautiful, beautiful women. I think this was in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which was considered a place where there's more beautiful women per capita there than anywhere else in the world, and it was true. And they liked me, and they got motel rooms, so I became a gigolo, and I would sleep in the room with the girls, or a girl, turned out to be 3 or 4, and they all knew it. And I'd have my little overnight bag and come walk back down to the trailer where my brother is, and he's all dirty and greasy, and and I'm all showered and fresh, and that was a wild, wild experience. One of the carnival, the wheel. Oh, why do I do this on camera? The Ferris wheel, the tall one. I think it was, it was a portable one, but it was really big. Fell over. Heard the rumble of that, but one of the most weird things that happened, not weird, scary. If I looked it up, I'm sure I could find it. I didn't know they had tornadoes. We were at this time we were in Edmonton, Alberta, and right next to the world's largest mall at that time, Edmonton Square Mall. And my brother and I are working together in the same stand, and before that, this is where drinking started becoming more of a habit, because at 8 o'clock at night, the drunks at the partiers would come out, and now you're serving $4 hot dogs, which is like $8 today. And all the drunks would get pissed at us, and, we would have to defend ourselves from some of them getting really mad. And I asked the owners, I'm like, how do you handle this? He says, well, start drinking. That's the only way you can handle a drunk. It worked. But one day we're sitting there, and these really dark clouds come in, and I'm seeing the swirling. I've seen several tornadoes in my lifetime at this time. In Illinois, we had one destroy a house right across the street from where we lived. And sure enough, I'm just trying to shorten this. All of a sudden, the big time was, I think it was a 5. It was huge, and it was blowing all the carnival stuff, just tearing tents apart, and you hear glass shattering, and you hear the rumble like a train. And behind my stand was a bar that sat in the middle of the fairgrounds there, just a brick building with no walls. And the tornado's close, really close. The stands are literally ripping right in front of us. And they wouldn't let us in. I'm banging the door, and nobody would let us in. and there was a girl in a Pepsi tent. It looked like a big Pepsi, like a big gulp. She was this really hot chick, Italian chick. And I don't know if it's just so tired, but we were left outside and we couldn't get in, so I tucked her. We laid on the ground and I laid on top of her next to this brick building while those tornadoes literally ripping stuff around us. And, and all I could think about was how hot this chick is. I'm like, God dang, if I make it out of this, oh my God, it's just crazy. So when the heat is on, I've got a sixth sense of humor. I always thought I'd probably do good in the special forces, because when the heat's on, I'm like, oh well, here we go. Here's the adventure. And needless to say, we made it out of the tornado. Hi, here I am. Or maybe I died, and that's how we incarnate into the next life. Like, you don't know. But anyways, I've had a few times like that in my life, like where I think I died and just switch dimensions and continue. So we left that, went back, did other jobs, worked for a seminar guy named J. Stephen Cates. He was one of the big ones, but at that point, that was my introduction into the seminar business. My brother Rick, we were living together. We were renting an apartment together and working at the same place. He got me the job there, and but I always noticed when he came into work, he had really. No, we weren't living together. See, this is so complex. Not at that time. We did end up living together. But he kept coming to work. He had these like yellow bags under his eyes. And I was like, dude, you look like shit. He goes, I know, I'm just tired, whatever. And like every day. And so it was a Friday night. He's like, hey, come stay at my house. We'll go out and party tonight, And so after work, we went there to his house, apartment. And he was freebasing coke. His friends came over. And now it's 10 o'clock. And I'm like, dude, we got to go. Like, it's late. Everything closes at midnight here. And I was concerned, obviously. We never went out. He just freebased through the morning when I woke up. And I was really concerned at this point. So I literally kidnapped him that weekend. And Steve Cates had a cabin up in Strawberry, Arizona, not too far away. And I knew where he hid the key. So I kidnapped my brother. Tell us to go stay up to the cabin for the weekend, and without Steve knowing. And when we got there, I threw his keys in the woods, and I said, we're not leaving until you're detoxed. And that was a nightmare watching him go through it and pissed at me. Where's the fucking keys? Where's the fucking keys? Mad at me. And I'm like, I think we stayed there for 4 days. Yeah, it was 4 or 5 days, and we both lost our job, obviously. But I thought that was a good cause. And J. Stephen Cates, he never knew about it until later. What happened? So from there, other girlfriends, moved back to Bend a few times, back to Arizona, back to Bend. God, I don't know if I've got it. I don't know why I'm telling this story. It's just, I should write all this down, really. So much. I'm just going to skip the part. I'm not going to think about the order. Ended up getting a job at Kuppenheimer's clothing suit store in Mesa, Arizona, and selling suits again several years later. And my brother Rick was working at a different seminar business called Results in Sales and Marketing, and they marketed the big speakers back then. Tom Hopkins, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Peter Lowe, Tony Robbins, And I went in and applied for a telemarketing job. The telemarketers make 6 figures. They basically set up appointments with businesses for the reps to come out and do a 1-hour seminar for free. And at the end of the seminar, they sell them tickets to the big event. And the guy I promoted primarily was Tom Hopkins, who wrote the book How to Master the Art of Sales, he is the master of sales over Zig Ziglar, Peter Lowe, all these guys. So I went in for an interview or to talk to them, and they said, we don't have anything open in the telemarketing department, but we have an opening for a field rep. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's ultimately what I want to do. I guess someday I want to do that. And this is a 6-figure paying job, and they fly you all over the country, and you're staying corporate apartments and given high-end rental cars and corporate cards, and you go do 2 to 3 seminars a day with big and small companies, and represent Tom Hopkins. It pays well. It pays really well, yeah. And I was 25. And they said, well, do you want to apply for the job? I'm like, I thought I was too young. I was like 24, and they're like, do you want to apply for the job? I'm like, well, yeah. And so they said to go back and make a video of yourself talking, VHS days, big recorder, and just talk, see how you handle a stage, and then come back next week. And so I did that, and they watched my presentation, and several days later they called me back up and said, hey, we've hired somebody else for the position. And now at this time I'm selling invitations in a mall to a timeshare resort, where we give you a free round of golf. Hated it. And after the interview and getting so excited about the field rep job, doing seminars and standing up and speaking publicly, which I've never done, I really wanted that. Like, that's all I wanted. In fact, I ended up calling them, this is no BS, I called them 48 days in a row, Monday through Friday at exactly 9:05 in the morning. And the receptionist knew who I was. And I would ask for the manager, Michael Marshall or Ron Marks. And I did it like clockwork, Monday through Friday. And they were always busy, or no, they don't have anything open. 48 times. I just knew what I wanted. And I would throw back some of the stuff they teach, like, persistence wears down resistance, and I'd say that on the phone. Hey, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Persistence wears down resistance. Just let Michael and Ron know this is what I'm going to do for a living whenever they want to hire me. I'm ready to go to work, And eventually, the 48th time, Michael Marshall picked up the phone and, complimented me on my persistence and said, you're hired. We expect a lot out of you. I said, hey, I'm your ball of clay, man. You can mold me any way you need. And so I got the job. And I went through 2 weeks of training, and next thing you know, I'm in San Jose, California, the Bay Area, not just San Jose. In a corporate apartment with another guy named Joe Sales. Just 2 of us. Oakwood Apartments. A lot of stars stay there and stuff like that. That was in Fremont. And now I'm getting ready to go do my first seminar. And so Ron Marks flies in, one of the owners of the company, because a lot of people check it out, at this point. And I think I had 300 people my first public speaking at a Russian computer company that was in San Jose. So I jump in my rental Cadillac, and I've got my Kuppenheimer suit on, picked up a few suits while I was working there. And I didn't practice. Practice like I should have. And the night before I went out and drank, so I was hungover because I was terrified. And I did no practicing, no training. I skimmed the notes. I was always bad at studying. I didn't study. But I had bullet points, and I pull into the parking lot of this big building in San Jose, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? You totally BS'd yourself into this. You're the youngest rep they have. I just turned 25, too. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to rent a car at that time. I think it's still 25. I don't know. It was back then. But And I thought of the mountains in Bend, Oregon. I thought of South Sister. There's a whole other story with South Sister Mountain. Crazy. I hiked it up at night in a full moon. It's just amazing. Anyways, and so I had that vision in my head sitting in the parking lot getting ready to walk in, and they're expecting me, and they've got 300 reps that I'm going to get them to talk to about something I didn't even study. And so I said, screw it. And I went to leave. I said, I'm just going back to the mountains, man. That's where I belong. Small town. And I got to the end of the parking lot before you have to pay to get out. And I clicked. I'm like, well, now that you're ready to leave, why don't you go see what happens? And that's what I did. I turned around and I walked in the building, went up to the receptionist, and I forgot his name, but Mr. Smith will be with you in a moment. And this guy comes out in this obviously very expensive suit. He's yelling at the receptionist. It's all echoing in the hallway. And he looks at me and he says, "You Rob from the seminar company?" I said, "Come on in." And he was the CEO of this company. So I go in his office like something out of the movie. The fireplace, the bar, it's huge, And all I saw, my first impression, he's all mad and demanding. And when he closed the doors, he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I'm having such a problem with my salespeople." And it was just really nice, He said, "Are you going to cover prospecting?" I'm like, "Well, that's one of my specialties, actually. Yes, I'm covering prospecting." "Oh, good." And we ended up talking, for a good half hour before it was time for me to get on the stage. And I've always gotten along with CEOs. Always. Like, I get along better with them than any other position. And so, time to go meet his staff. And it's a full-on theater room, with the stage and the big projector behind me and the podium. And he gets up on the stage to introduce me. And, I just had a half-an-hour conversation with this young man. You've all trained on Tom Hopkins videos, and that's all we train on is Tom Hopkins. And he's a rep straight from his company, and I believe he knows what he's talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a hand for Rob Giuliano. And I get up on the stage, and I'm looking at these faces, and I'm spinning. And they look like Cabbage Patch Dolls. Back then that was a big thing, but I just couldn't, there was just faces. And I'm trying to talk, and my mouth is so dry. And my heartbeat's going crazy. And they give you a video, VHS. It's like a 15-minute video about Tom Hopkins and his story, and it's an island of relief for new people. Like, if you stumble, pop in a video and regroup, get yourself together. And so I couldn't even hear myself talking, and I was like, oh, I'm screwed. I'm hungover. This guy has these huge expectations on me. So I popped the video in. I talked a little bit. I can't remember what I said. And I just know they were all looking at each other, and you hear that quiet, like what the hell is it? Like they're not buying it. So I pop the video in, the lights go out. And I'm like, come on, get your shit together, Rob. Get your shit together. This is really important. You want to do this, And I remember Ron Marks telling me, never tell him you're new. Don't ever tell him you're new. So the video turns off. I get on the stage, and I'm looking at everybody, and I have to. It's really obvious that I'm terrified, and I know it. And it's uncomfortable for the audience to watch that. It makes everybody uncomfortable. Most everyone, except for the cruel people. And so I looked at everybody and said, I've got to ask everybody here, how many of you have a fear of speaking publicly? Can I see your hands? And everybody raised their hand, and I just felt this I was like, oh, God, I'm so glad. This is the first time I've ever spoke publicly. Oh, my God, I'm terrified. And I got a standing ovation. And then I just eased into it. I found out they were just humans, just people like me. And so at the end of my meetings, my job is to sell these $300 tickets for a day with Tom Hopkins, a 6-hour seminar that's coming up in 4 to 6 weeks. And, and there's a way to close the deal. Like, who's the top producer here? Bill? Hey, Bill, stand up. Give him a hand. Yeah, we know you're going and you have the money. But why don't you help me get 5 more people and we'll give a discount for you and everyone. This whole thing we do. And I got to that point, and then the CEO stands up and goes, no, you're all going. I'm paying for everyone to go. And a big clap. So I sold 100%. And these were like $300 tickets, and I was making $18 a ticket. So take 300 times 18. I'm not even going to edit it. It was thousands. And so I had to fill out all the forms and take the forms from them. And I had a stack of these tickets, in my coat. And I ran out of the building and got in the car, raced back to the corporate apartments where Ron is. I had no other appointments. They wanted to see how I did. Anyways, and I walk into the corporate apartments, and the girl that was there that I was supposed to train with, she's just sitting there. And Ron looks at me and goes, how'd you do? I said, I sold 100%, 300 tickets. He's like, no way. And this girl goes, that's not fair. He never even trained. He got drunk last night. And Ron's like, don't even worry about her. Yeah, took me out in the balcony. Fantastic, good job. How did you like it? I'm like, I love it. It's a rush. It's a dopamine rush, I love it. So I did that for several months, almost a year. And I remember by the second week, I got so confident. You get cocky, you just over-exaggerate. You're telling jokes, and it's all scripted, most of it. And they turned out to be one of their top people, in a very short period of time. And then I ran across Jeanette. And Jeanette was absolutely gorgeous, 10, 11. She looked like Alicia Silverstone at that age, 21, but a nicer body. And I knew her in Bend when she was younger. I met her once before she was developed, and she was a friend of my brother's friend, John Galliano. And he said, hey, you remember Jeanette? And I'm like, yeah, I remember, yeah, sort of. She just moved to LA. I told her you live there. She wants to meet with you, I'm like, cool. So she came to the corporate apartments, and at this time I was actually playing with one of the female reps, very good-looking lady, Linda. She was 35, very attractive lady, and I was 25. But it was just that life. But when Jeanette came in, I was like, oh my God, she just made me nervous, beautiful. And so I met her parents, a week later or so, and they were telling me about a resort that they're going to run down in San Jose do Cabo, Mexico. And they wanted me to come and be a part of it. And I'm like, no, I love this job, man. I can't leave this job. And then he told me the money they're making. Well, you basically run the resort. We run the timeshare part of it. You don't sell. You train people and motivate them and do what you do. And you're looking at making 40 or 50 grand a month. And I didn't believe it. So I met with my dad, who's very conservative. And he was, has an accountant degree and all this stuff. And Calvin was my girlfriend's dad's name. Did this big presentation, my dad, to show how the money's made and everything, because I really loved my job. My dad, at the end, I was like, what do you think? And he's like, I don't see why not, And so I quit the seminar business and drove down with them to San Jose do Cabo, which is next to Cabo San Lucas, and we got to the Las Bugambilias Resort. That was the name of the resort. And we got there, kind of on the beach next to the golf course, actually, in San Jose do Cabo. And the first time I've ever been to Mexico, and I'm going to live there, so it was kind of frightening in itself, after watching all the movies about Mexico. We get there and the pool's filthy, there's weeds. I mean, this place nobody's ran it for a while, even though they have employees, Mexican employees there. They just don't do anything. I'm going to speed through this one. I was there for almost a year. My brother Eddie came with us. A friend of mine, Rory, came with us. There was a team of us. And everything looked great, but there's always one thing that nobody ever talks about. Nobody can even project in any business that you're starting. In fact, all the business proposals I've made in my life, I always have a miscellaneous with thousands of dollars in there. Like, what's that for? Except for the one thing nobody can figure out that will be a problem. So, first getting all the employees to work again, being gringos, they didn't like that, and I was young, so we had to start doing the work, like pulling weeds and cleaning the pool, and then they would come to work. That's how it worked down there. But anyways, it was a timeshare place, and you have OPCs that sit at the airport, and hey, we'll give you a free round of golf for a sunset cruise. If you tour our resort, you don't have to buy anything, and after that, you get free golf or blah, blah, blah. So that was what we used to get people to come in and tour the resort in hopes of selling them timeshare. And so we were trying to get all the accounts set up with these gifts, like sunset cruise, dinner here, a couple of San Lucas, golf. Well, whoever ran that place before owed everybody in town money. So nobody would open an account with us. And the owners I haven't even met yet. That's a story in itself. Calvin knew them, but I've never met them. They were 3 owners. They were called Grupo Hercules in Mexico, and they're pretty much cartel. Yeah, nice people, though. I ended up meeting one of them at the last part. We picked him on his Learjet, and, so we couldn't get any gifts, and so we decided to open. There's so much more to this story. It's crazy, dude. It almost does it a disservice to talk about it quickly because there's so much going on in every one of these things that's story worthy. But I'm too lazy to write now. A book, I've done it. Didn't get the results I wanted, so I've had a lot of failures with these things I've pursued. And it's just that, I'm getting at the age now, it's like, screw it. And you'll learn that on all my other videos, why I do that. So we opened a restaurant called Patio Loco, and I'm good at making spaghetti and meatball sandwiches, and there you don't need a license to open a restaurant, you don't need any of that stuff. And so we opened a restaurant called Patio Loco, crazy porch patio, and sold Italian food in a place where nobody had Italian food. Back then, you have to understand, Cabo San Lucas didn't have McDonald's, it didn't have Walmart's, it was not Americanized at all. So there was no Italian food there. So that's how we would get people to tour our resort. Is say, 2 for dinner or lunch, free. Just come and tour the resort. It takes a half an hour. You don't have to buy anything. It was too late. And, we found out how much money was owed to all the other vendors and gifts. It was like $70,000. And, less than that. There was just some other expenses. And one of the owners was going to fly over to, see how much more money it's going to take to make this thing go, and Calvin, my girlfriend's dad, is like, don't tell him how much it is. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Don't tell him. It's got to happen. He'd get mad at me. I'm like, no, screw you. I'm telling him. So we picked this guy up in the airport there in San Jose del Cabo, Learjet, and suit, long hair, very intelligent, very nice man. But this was a big money people. One of the owners owns the entire construction company for all the roads in Mexico. Another one owns all the rights to any import-export ice cream from around the world into Mexico. And then I don't know what the third one was, but it's probably the Godfather. So we talked to him, and I said, hey, we need, I think it was $71,000. And he goes, okay, I appreciate that. Well, we're going to wait till next year. We got some other projects we want to do. But you guys are welcome to come back next year. And of course, Calvin was mad at me and all that stuff. So Calvin flew to California. He knew a man. He was managing his motels by the name of Jet Mora, who's this Philippine guy. in Beverly Hills, who owns a bunch of motels in Santa Monica, Beverly Hills. He's a big roller in Beverly Hills, Jed Mora. And Jed Mora wanted to start doing seminars on his success story and others, and well, I knew how the business ran. So we moved to LA. And I meet this guy, and his office is on Cannon and Wilshire, big money, met the movie stars, all that stuff. He funded movies like Driving Miss Daisy. And we were there to start a seminar business that we called Dreams to Reality in Beverly Hills. And I'm excited, I'm like, man, this is even better. This is what I enjoy to do. He's introduced me to all these big players, like the owners of the LA Clipper. He'd come into Jet's office. He'd have investors fly in from Japan, these big businessmen, and I'm 26, I think, at the time. And he'd always pull me into the board meeting. He was Asian, he had an accent, being Asian. He'd say, I want you to meet my motivation man. This is Rob. And they'd get up and bow and treat me like I'm one of them, like I'm a multi-millionaire, like they all obviously are, maybe billionaires, There's a whole other book on that experience. And we got all the printing done, we got the hiring, we got everything together, the pay structure, everything, it took a month or so. And I'm excited about this because our first appointment's with this head-hunting company in Bel Air that Jet knows, and I'm going to be the first one to go sell tickets to J. Stephen Cates, the first guy that I talked about in the seminar business that had the cabin in Strawberry. We still stayed in touch. And so we were selling his seminar for a first one before getting Jet Moore on the stage, because there's a lot to do before that happens. And so I went to this headhunting company in Bel Air, and I'm talking, these guys are heavy rollers, We're talking, he's got his face in a Time magazine with the dark glasses, money, big money. And I went in and did a seminar, and everybody there's wealthy. You could see it, all of his sales staff and everything. But I just did what I knew how to do. Sold 100%. They really liked me. Everybody liked me in Beverly Hills because there was that Oregon humbleness that I had, the innocence I had. It was like Alex P. Keaton to a certain degree, if you know who he is. Some of you do, Gen Xers do. I was just a motivated young guy that wanted to make a lot of money. Well, needless to say, a company called Rexall, you've all heard of them. They started an MLM company of some type, and they came in to talk to Jet Mora, and instantly Jet didn't want to do seminars. Like, instantly. He's like, no, we need to do this. And I'm like, dude, you do that. I'll run the seminar business, And, everything's perfect. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Well, this is the interesting part, and I'll end with this, because there's many, 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 many other jobs and careers and making millions in direct sales as a distributor, to landscaping for $12 an hour, to, I would need somebody to sit down and write everything times and then correct me with all the stuff I've done, all the places I've lived. It's phenomenal. It's a lot. Like how many cars I've had, hundreds in my lifetime. So one night I'm at home there in LA, and I'm living in one of his apartments, me, my girlfriend, and her father and mother, big apartment, 7 stories up on Wilshire Boulevard. No, on, maybe I'm getting my roads wrong. Cannon was in Beverly Hills, but Wilshire was the main road, and it took us right to our apartment complex on Lafayette, I think, Park. Not a nice area, but the apartment complex is nice. And one night, God, there's so many things that happened there. But when I'm sitting there one night and everything in my body's saying, you need to leave LA now, I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. This is crazy. It's like everything. And I'm telling my girlfriend, dude, I think I'm losing my mind. Why? And I told her, so we need to leave LA like now. And she's like, what? And I'm like, she says, how does it feel? I said, I don't know, like something's on fire, or like explode, like something really bad is going to happen. And it was really serious, and I was concerned, and I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I think I'm losing my mind. And we talked for a while, and she goes, well, maybe I ought to listen to it, and I'm like, oh, what? I've got everything. I'm in Beverly Hills. I'm hanging out with the heavy rollers, I've got this beautiful girlfriend, and, I've been to a Hollywood party, and met some celebrities, and, I'm kind of plugged in now. And she goes, well, I'm just saying, maybe I ought to listen to it. So I went to bed that night and woke up the next morning, and it was stronger, like, get out now. And I told my girlfriend, we got to leave. She goes, I'm not leaving. You're freaking scaring me. I don't know what's going on with this. Like, no, we need to go. And she wouldn't go. And, I had a rental car at this time. Just coming from Mexico. I said, I gotta go. It was really that strong. It was believable. So the quickest way out of town was to jump on Amtrak downtown LA. So they dropped me off, and I just took a couple of bags, and I was heading back to Bend, Oregon, where my parents were. So I got on the train, something like 6 a.m, I can't remember times. And I'm on the train, we're outside LA, and on the TV in the upper cart, they got the TV playing. And this is 1992, and the LA riots happened right after I left. True story. And where I would have driven in the rental Cadillac I had, that's what I get used to from the seminar business, wearing my suit and everything, I would have drove right in the middle of the riot, the Rodney King riot, which was devastating, and then our apartment complex caught on fire. Yeah, true story. Couldn't believe it. And on the train that early in the morning, like I fell asleep, it's like 4 a.m, and the train's been stopped for a really long time. I could feel that it's been stopped a really long time. And I wake up, and this guy's sitting, I'm like, what's going on? He says, oh, we had an earthquake on the Oregon and California border, and the tracks are bent up ahead. So they were re-straightening them. I'm like, what the heck is going on, man? I'm leaving LA. Or LA, same thing. Oh, man. And I got to my parents' house and had very little money left, no car. And I move in with them after this whole journey for 2.5 years, 3 years. Yeah, no, 2.5. And now I'm in small town Bend, which it was a small town back then, maybe 20,000 at that time. And now I'm having to look for jobs, and now I'm overqualified. And I couldn't get a job. I was overqualified. And my brother Rick was living in town, and he was selling these vacuum air filtration units called Fairfax. And he said, why don't you sell these? And I'm like, I'm not going to door-to-door sell vacuums, after being in the seminar business in Beverly Hills and, all this stuff. He goes, well, just ride it with me and see what you think. And I watched the presentation. I'm like, my God, that is a cool machine. I was sold on it. So I got in the direct sales business because there was nothing else I could do. And I'm riding with these like stereotype direct sales people with old Cadillacs, and they got a joint in their ashtray. Tom was his name, the guy who trained me, the first guy. Yeah, and they were door knockers. They go up to the door with rock Cornish game hens, like wrapped up, like 2 of them wrapped up in foil from the store. And, around Thanksgiving, that's what they would give away to, get in the house to watch a presentation. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to do this. And he said, okay, now when I get in the house, and he lights his joint, just be quiet, okay, and just take notes, And, going from Mexico, the seminar business, Beverly Hills, to now I'm riding with this door-to-door guy with an old Cadillac, and what is his name, Ed, on vacation, Uncle Ed, this guy, that guy. And I got into it. I failed my first month. I quit. I found a job at a paint store mixing paint. The distributor, the owner, came in and said, Rob, what's it going to take for you to sell? And I'm like, I don't know, I need to make more. And he put me on a really low cost, like $750 for a machine, and they sold for $1,600 at that time. I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this, and I don't have to be one of them. And I had all these nice clothes and stuff. So I said, okay, I'll do it for a month. And they had appointments. They were setting appointments at this time, so I didn't have to go knock doors. And I sold 11 my first month, made thousands. And I was like, my God, what a wonderful job. Really, I'm sitting in people's homes, casually having a conversation, showing them something that's actually really cool. And everybody wants one. It's just a matter of if they can afford it. That's all. That's all I have to do. Just chill. Sit here for an hour or 4 hours or 5 hours. These people just talk. Write a check. I kicked ass. Sold 11 my first month. And I was really enjoying it. And then I said, you know what? I want to do seminars. I wanted to do what Tom Hopkins did. I want to do seminars. I'm going to write a book. And you know what? I need to master direct sales and be the best at this. And when I reach the top, then I have the credentials to do seminars. So I'm going to stop here. 4 months later, I had my first office open with my parents. My dad was against this. My brother Rick, my mom, dad, and we moved to Mesa, Arizona. We opened our own office in 4 months. That's how much money I made in the first 4 months I was there. I'll continue the story, but 7 years later, I was a multimillionaire by the age of 29 in that business. We did it legally and ethically without being the scumbags that most people think you have to be good in that business. So I had the credentials to do seminars, but there's so much going on here. I don't know if you like hearing my stories. I don't know. I don't really enjoy. I enjoy talking about it, but it's not important for me. So, but it gives you an idea where I'm coming from, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. And we'll talk about that another time. If I see people watching this, if I see people liking the video, and I see subscribers coming on, then I'll continue talking about this stuff, my journey. I've been nomadic. I'm called a Renaissance man, and I believe I am. I fit the category, meaning, I know a little about a lot. But there's very few things I know a lot about that I can actually say I'm really good at. So, write a comment. If you watch the whole video through, please like it. I'm going to decide how I'm going to continue my channel based on algorithms have a lot to do with it, but your replies, if this is worth it to you. I'm trying to give some value. I've got a lot of experience as a serial entrepreneur. I make cars run on water. I figured it out myself and formed a company called United H2O, and I made the news.
There's a lot of abnormal things I've done for a living, all legal, all ethical, and have been called a serial entrepreneur. So, and now I'm not. So, well, thank you for watching.